This one is about an Amish gentleman in North Central PA here. He owns a nice, big, beautiful piece of property that he has his home on. And like a lot of people, he is growing his land through neighboring parcels. So when a neighboring piece of land with a house on it came up, he bought it. And there's a house on it. And so the realtor who helped him buy it, he said, will you help me find a tenant? And in this case, she said, yes, I'll help you find this tenant. And sometime in mid 2024, like I want to say May or June, found a tenant and placed them at market rent in the property. And the first 3 months or so went fine. And then the tenant stopped paying rent. And after about 2 months of not getting rent, this Amish gentleman came to me. He had heard about my services as a professional property manager in my company, One Focus Property Management, and he asked for help. And so I went and I looked at the situation. And I said, yeah, totally, sir. We can help you with this. We will get these tenants compliant, or we'll get possession of the property back, whichever, we hope they'll stay, but maybe they won't. Because they were compliant in all other ways on the property. The property was being properly cared for. They did have an animal they weren't supposed to have, but we were willing to work all that out. But there was no payment of rent for about 2 months. And the third month was just around the corner. So this gentleman had agreed to hire me, and I was putting together everything we needed. And I'd asked him, I said, hey, can you get like a move-in condition, maybe some photos of the property when it was rented, so I'll know what the property condition was when it's eventually time for these tenants to move out. And he made the call the night before we were supposed to start to this realtor who'd helped him place the tenant. And this person got really upset. She got really upset that he was not going to use her services to continue managing this tenant, and he agreed to hire her as the property manager, which he did that night on the telephone. And her first act as property manager was to call the tenants and scream and cuss and yell and tell them they really needed to pay this rent. That was her best first step to do this. But alas, so the next morning I heard from my now not to be client, sorry, I'm not hiring you. I'm going to go with this. And I said, all right, no problem. Like, good for you. Good luck. And something told me to just mark my calendar for like 6 weeks later and see if this guy got his rent. And I did. I called him up 6 weeks later and I said, hey, is everything good with that property over there? And he said, actually, it's not. I've received no rent. And my property manager did attempt to do an eviction process, but fumbled it, did it improperly, and the complaint was rejected by the court. And he is now 6 weeks later, so now he's 3.5 months behind in rent and nothing's happening. And so I said, sir, are you ready to hire us now? And he was. So anyway, we're doing what we need to be doing and we're getting started here. And the owner was really concerned about how eventually we were going to collect. And I said, well, did this property manager, when they ran the background checks and things, did they get social security number, date of birth, those sorts of pieces of information on an application? He says, well, she used TransUnion SmartMove. And so the tenant put all their information into the system and it just gives you a approval recommendation or not. You don't actually get that data. So I'm gonna have to make another video about that. I got to investigate that. TransUnion SmartMove, if you're not getting that data, then you need to get a separate application so you have that data for collection purposes, months or years down the road. But alas, he didn't have any of that. And I said, okay, well, at least this, realtor did do something, and TransUnion SmartMove is like bare minimum. Okay. So anyway, we're getting started and we're trying to get the hearing date. And one of the ways you can get the hearing date, after you've made a complaint, is to call the court. This court wasn't very helpful. So we were checking the online portal, the district justice portal. Well, don't we put these tenants' names into that portal and pops up, they have been evicted from 2 other properties in the past 3 years in and around this area where they live. And that was shocking to me. I was so upset to have to tell my client, I'm so sorry, that person that you paid a full month's rent to procure that tenant ended up placing you, a freshly evicted tenant, twice over in that property. Now, I'm really proud to say we, within about 7 or 8 weeks, it normally takes 6 weeks, but that court down there was wily. And we had to really push and advocate for our client. But within like 7 to 8 weeks, in this case, the tenant didn't pay any rent ever, had no intention on doing it. And I think they were just milking it for as long as they could. And so that's my story today. You've got to be really careful who you rent to. Check every possible source of information you can. I make other videos on that on my channel. So yeah, let me know if you want to hear another one.